SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeep.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity. What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sort of lathe.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com.
Are you sure?
Exceedingly so. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps, and I'm joined in the Grandma's Couch studio by these couple lovely gentlemen. Jeff and I are appropriately adorned for the spooktacular week that it is.
Absolutely.
Scott, however, is ready to go winter wheeling.
And I don't understand that because I
I'm
know
very
what he was
confused.
doing this weekend.
I'm rebelling.
You were
worst.
at the appropriate festival that you could have been dressed ready to
I don't
go
know- I
today.
don't know what you're talking about.
So anyways,
Who are you guys?
That is Jeff Shamani, the producer,
The Italian
and
Stallion.
he is the parade extraordinaire.
oh, well, if we're going to do titles, then you are the trick-or-treat crawler, hander out of candy,
Well,
mad
you-
scientist, Scott Brown.
Oh, there you go.
We had a big weekend, folks, and if you're interested in that kind of stuff and kind of like to hear about us personally, you'll have to hang in to the end of the program to kind of share in that that level of insight. Otherwise, today we are talking about millennial anti-theft
Oh,
devices.
he said it. He said
That's
the word.
right.
That's right. And what
Is it millennial anti-theft or is it
Well,
Gen Z anti-theft?
so-
or?
I don't think it's millennial.
It's millennial anti-theft, and I,
No.
as a representative of the millennial, right? So we're
elders though.
Xeals or whatever. 'cause
Zennials.
No, Zennials is when they're millennial to Zers,
No,
right?
Zennials spelled with an X. X-E-N-N.
Well, there you go. Then it's like xylophone.
Yes.
That's fine. So there are plenty of people that I know in our age range who cannot drive a stick to save their life, and there are
That's
plenty
fair.
of people I know in in the same age range in that millennial generation who claim they can drive a stick and they shouldn't. And we're going to be talking about you today, folks. But this is going to be more of a tech-inspired talk, and so a little bit of gossip from the mothership and a lot of tech about about manual transmission work in
the
general.
magic.
And before we get too far into that, we've got a ton of comments. And for those that were logged in at the beginning, you may have got to hear the infamous goat that cues us so we know we're live.
The goat has been playing in our ears for a couple of years now, just so you can fully appreciate that.
So anyways, in the comments this morning, Derek was first. Good morning, gents.
Morning, Derek. You got number one.
Amy is good morning, guys. Giaga Jeepers, good morning, guys. Keith Dart, good morning, guys. Roy Hill, good morning. Michael Lentz, good morning. And Joe O'Brien, the club, LOL.
What's up, folks? Good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us. If you are listening in your ear holes at a later date, we really appreciate you. Realistically, you are the driving force that has us on 6 continents.
Which you should be on a airplane going to the 7th right now.
Right now, somebody needs to log us in at Antarctica. But
And just so that you know, we are on both YouTube and Facebook Live now, and currently Facebook Live is winning the race.
And so that's what I was going to say. If you are out driving truck, working on the assembly line, wrenching in your garage, or holding a fake meeting so that you can just listen to all things fun and Jeep and automotive, we appreciate you because you are, as I mentioned, the driving force that compels this program along. Realistically, we could sit around and talk to each other, and honestly, we probably do too much already. But you are the reason why we do this, and so thank you for that. And if you think about it, make sure that when you're done with this, leave us a 5-star review, share it, tell a friend, encourage people to get hooked up with the Jeep lifestyle and I Speak Jeep as a whole.
And come comment live on the program because we will try to read out most of those comments. Some get left out, but you have to come to the chat to enjoy all of
And
that.
that's the beauty, is that you can jump on live almost every Monday at 10:19 a.m.
And so in the comments, I mean, we're just getting a bunch more here. Joe Brilla saying, my hovercraft is full of eels. Gotta love Joe with the random quotes.
Perfect. Makes sense to me.
Matt is saying good morning. Jake is good morning. Got 3 Jeeps, all manuals as they should be. And then Eric is saying good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning to you all. So we will be talking about that and sharing about that. And like I said, we got a lot to update you on in general. But with that introduction, is there anything I missed in the process?
I don't think so. No, I know that we've got some upcoming events that we're going to have to talk about, but we'll talk about that towards the end.
That's right.
So otherwise, I think we shift into gear and get going.
Oh, 2 drums and a cymbal fall off a cliff. Well, when you drove in this morning, Scott, what transmission did your vehicle have?
An automatic.
Jeffrey, when you drove in this morning to work, what transmission did your vehicle have?
Called out.
Yeah, automatic.
When I drove into work this morning, my Wrangler equally had an automatic.
Yep, there it is.
Oh,
Sad
bum,
face.
bum, bum. Such a day. Now, my first Jeep was, in fact, an 87 YJ with a 5-speed manual transmission. It was the world's worst transmission ever made.
Peugeot.
Peugeot. And those of you who are in Italy or the Mediterranean, please don't come at me with pitchforks and torches. Oh, I
Well,
will trash Peugeot.
We
as a
just
brand,
completely
though.
lost all of Europe
We
for
just lost
listeners.
Europe. We lost them. They light us on fire, burning whatever merchandise they purchased.
Thought that was French.
Oh, it is.
So
I'm
now
trying to make it Italian.
We really lost
made it all
all of
back.
Europe.
I
That was my
apologize.
best French, my baguette accent, but it was a really poor appropriation of the country it came from.
We apologize.
I don't
to his-
apologize, just
to
so
his,
you know.
to his parents and his mom that rated us the top
In the
podcast.
universe?
Universe,
'Cause they're all
voted number
teachers.
It
one.
just got degraded.
They're all teachers. He just failed geography.
I did. I'm usually so good.
I think
with
we
that.
lost like 4 letter grades on that.
Wow.
We're a D-rated program
Yikes.
now.
All right. So the PA10, the worst transmission in the history of man. That was my first Jeep. I attempted, I eventually did the AX15 upgrade and external slave. In fact, actually, when most people, I was in a traditional 4-year college, and while most people are actually studying their subject matter, I was in the back. Now, this is,
Do you do that in college?
yeah, you do. You
Oh.
do. But instead, I was actually doing research on AX15 transmissions and doing internal to external slave conversion, drive shaft lengths, transfer case adaptation, so on and so forth. And that's when I did my first big transmission swap. Was instead of actually doing my appropriate course study, I was in the background sketching out how to do my transmission swap in the
geez.
process. So I definitely, that's where I cut my teeth. Now, I lie. I had a 5-speed manual Ford Escort first.
I apologize again.
Yeah. So both of my first whips were manual transmission.
Mine
equipped
as well.
vehicles.
My first actual driver was a 5-speed that I beat the crap out of.
That was your Ford pick 'em up truck too, wasn't it?
No, it was a Chevy S10 with a 4
Oh, it was S10. I'm sorry. I called you a Ford. I put you. I tried to make you a Ranger man.
Yeah.
My bad.
Now.
You know what? This sounds crazy. My high school best friend at the time was a Ford Ranger. It was the same. I always equate your square body S10 and his.
I've got so
square
many
body
bad
Ranger.
stories of my best friend with his Ranger in high school.
Well, Rangers were just a different breed, honestly.
Danger Ranger.
Danger Ranger.
Yeah.
And Danger Ranger owners are a different breed. They're not as weird as Jeep people, but they're just way more.
Yeah.
It's weird. Danger Ranger
Oh,
people.
Amy's saying she had the Ranger.
She did.
Oh, I knew there was a Ranger
With a
in
stick.
I knew there was a Ranger in your history.
There it is.
Did you have a manual trans?
No, one of my good friends when we were in the fire department had I want to say it was a GMC pickup with a stick, and that was the first stick shift I ever drove. And my friend's like, "Here, go take it for a spin, have fun."
That's what you learned. That is how you learned.
Yeah, and that was a mistake because I got it going, no problem. I got it great. I was flying around circles around our fire department at the time, which you shouldn't do. And we got a call, so all the sirens and stuff are going off, and I'm trying to stop this vehicle that I'm going way too fast around our building.
Oh my goodness!
And I didn't know how to do it. It was scary for a half a second.
Yeah, it can be.
But yeah, otherwise that was where I first learned stick shift, and then honestly, fiddled around with it a little bit here and there. Never owned a stick shift, but when I worked at the car dealership, they asked me to go move some vehicles around as part of our display for upcoming sale, and I was like, well, I don't know if I can drive the sticks. And they're like, don't care, go drive it. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And
this model comes with an already compromised clutch.
Correct. And honestly, that's what I learned on new Jeeps. Is how I learned how to drive stick shift. Really learned it. And then of course,
there's why there was recalls and why we have been gainfully employed in swapping
you're welcome.
clutches.
You're welcome. And honestly, that was the Chrysler Crossfire was out at that time.
Yep.
So I got to drive that with the speed shift and everything. That was fun.
Just so a fun fact for those listeners, the Chrysler Crossfire that Jeffrey is referencing is actually the same transmission that was in your JK Wrangler at the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That is the identical Mercedes 6-speed transmission.
No kidding.
Just a different shift tower.
Yep. Because they toted the speed shift on it.
Yeah, if you're a
where you didn't have
JK,
to clutch all the way.
Right. If you're a JK Wrangler, you have to reach out to the passenger side window to hit 5th and 6th and then reverse ultimately. But same transmission, Chrysler Crossfire 6-speed transmission can arguably interchange directly with the JK Wrangler. Here's your fun fact.
The more you know.
Yep. So I personally, my parents, as you mentioned, were educators, but they were both drivers. They were wheel women. So they raised us to be drivers. My sister's first couple vehicles were manual as well. And we drove.
And her current Jeep is a manual.
Yeah, my sister's current Jeep is a manual. And that's the thing. And so I've always. It's one of those things I think you almost take for granted. Like I meet people who are like, I love stick shift and that's how Jeep should be. And I'm like, I have driven so many stick shift vehicles in my life that I'm like, meh, like, I don't know about that. Like,
I think it's fun to have one available to the stable. That's why my wife's CJ7 is the stick. That was the only way she would allow that to be built.
Right.
So if I want to drive a stick shift that is doorless and topless, I can do that. And then I go and I get in my hardtop, full door, automatic.
You're a Nancy.
So with air conditioning and heated seats and drive.
You are a Grand Cherokee owner if I ever met one.
I gotta say, my first experience with stick shift that I just, as a human being, got to experience being in a vehicle that was stick shift was a YJ. And I was in the back seat. And I honestly don't remember if it was my grandfather or my uncle who was driving. It was my uncle's Jeep. And as we were driving, the shifter came off in their hand. Mm-hmm. And he's just staring at he's staring at it going, what do we do? And
you put it back on. That's what do you mean? What do? You put it back on. Do you know how many times I was running down the road? Every janky stick shift I've ever had has some type of quirk that you have to work out in the process.
Meh.
Yep. I remember them getting it, back in enough to get it parked, and then they fiddled around and got it secured again, and life goes on.
Yeah. I think that was actually a little bit of the beauty, and we might unpack that as we talk about the technicalities. The earliest stick shifts were rudimentary. Ultimately, it's pretty a simple technology. It was intended to be simple, right?
Yeah.
And I think we'll transition to that, within reason. Mm-hmm. And it's important to note that, that realistically we've kind of stopped in, kind of contextualize for folks that we had basically a 3-speed manual transmission in some of our oldest Jeeps.
Yep.
Which I've, driven and loved in my vintage. If you ever see me wheel like the 48 Willys or Old Blue, that's your standard T90 3-speed. And we've made our way all the way up through the JK and JL production, which landed in 6-speed manuals.
Yes.
And realistically, manual transmissions were kind of king of the road up until honestly just about 15 years ago. As far as if you were a semi truck driver or a hot shot hauler, or you wanted to drive a big truck, or if you really wanted to be kind of intimately acquainted with your vehicle, really choosing your gear and appropriately kind of putting the responsibility of technical driving on the driver, manual transmissions were king of the road.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's important to know, if you recognize my that Crew Cab International, that thing is actually a manual transmission, which is kind of the coolest thing because it's for me, it's an interesting hybrid where the computer actually has throttle control. And so unlike many of our Jeeps where you're controlling the throttle with your gas pedal, which is obviously one of the challenges of clutching and throttling for the average person, the truck actually does it for you, which is an interesting thing. Now, some people have contended that that's just the torque of the motor. Some people have said that that's actually programming in the computer. I don't actually have a great answer.
I really drove unless you've had an old cold-blooded carbureted motor with a stick and you're clutching with your one foot and you're stepping on the brake with the heel of your right and you're keeping your toe on the gas to keep it running.
The last time I drove Old Blue, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
The last time I wheeled Old Blue was at Tom's Trails in Western PA.
Yep.
And there's a downhill descent which then kind of terminates in a ditch crossing. And it's a pretty steep little ditch. Right?
Yep. Well, at least it used to be that way.
Well, yeah, I don't know what it looks like, but it used to be a pretty steep little ditch that you kind of had to slinky through. And Old Blue, obviously, leaf spring suspension. Most of the people wheeling these days are on a coil of some sort. I still support you. Leaf springs for the pores.
Now he just...
And so,
our ratings are dropping off.
No, the pores will support us in their leaf springs. I get
Listen, if we're going to go that far, we might as well bring up Daddy Jeep's comment that they're going to be manual swapping an Astrovan soon, along with an LS.
I love that.
I know you do.
I love that.
I knew you were going to love that comment.
I always wanted to build an Astrovan.
They actually, it was an option.
It was an option at
if
the
I'm
time.
not mistaken. And when I was in high school, we may have seen an Aerostar with a stick in the parking lot. There was just this crowd of guys staring at it going, it does exist.
That's super cool stuff. Well, anyway, so I was driving Old Blue, which is, had a Solex carb on it, which is absolutely a garbage carburetor. It works about 30% of your power band, and leaf sprung. And I got nose down in this crevasse.
Yeah.
And the
carburetor's not happy.
The carburetor's not happy. It's spitting and sputtering because the bowl's trying to run dry. I'm trying to keep my clutch down. Now, at this point in time, I still had my boots on. I wasn't quite barefoot yet. I had,
Is this before or after we've removed the heater because your feet didn't fit?
I think we removed the heater mid-trail.
I think you're correct. I think
and then I ended up
this.
removing. It was after this because I had my 1 foot down. And those of you who are listening in ear holes, I'm actually repeating it. I'm living it again.
It has to.
In my head, I'm actually doing it in studio right now. So anyways, I had my heel on the brakes, which I think I was only on like 3 out of the 4 brakes. I think one of my brakes wasn't good, so we pounded off the line just so I could go wheeling.
We doesn't recommend, but
don't do that in your modern vehicles. And
a nail will work if you're in that pinch. But anyway,
so I was trying to get gas back in the bowl, and I remember the whole nose dipping down in this crevice, and then the back end of the Jeep started to lift up because obviously leaf springs and articulation, and I just painfully struggled to to grab my gear to get gas in the bowl and to kind of bounce through it. Eventually ended up actually the bowl ran dry. I couldn't get enough gas into it, and I ended up having to kind of coast down the crevice and kind of pop up out of it before I could restart the Jeep.
Yep.
So that's what wheeling used to be.
Yes.
All of you in your heated seats and air conditioning and slinky school bus and minivan suspension, your JL, JKs, and JTs.
So what I was going to bring up was when Scott brought up the carburetor and yet you haven't really driven until you've driven one of these. I factually remember it was like my first day here, and I hadn't driven a stick in probably a decade, maybe but once.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Hey, I need you to go start this and pull it in." And it was a carburetor Jeep stick shift. And I'm like, oh, this is a test.
It is. It is absolutely a test.
And I went out and fired it up and drove it in. And he's like, "I'm surprised you got that started." And
Yeah.
I'm like, me too.
Make you drive manual transmissions and make you do floor work is absolutely how we initiate
I may
people.
have been trying to haze him, but he did pass.
I don't even see it as hazing, folks. I see it as like fight
Growth.
Yeah,
Character building.
trial by fire. It's character building. If you can do floor work and drive stick shift transmissions,
When you're a
you
wheelman,
might actually have a place.
You
in the
can
family.
drive anything.
That's right.
Yeah, and obviously, if you need a good laugh, there's a great video of Davey the Savage trying to drive one of our
We're still working on
good
it.
friends' vehicles.
And honestly, I think this episode, we should give some advice to someone if wants to drive a stick shift. How do you drive a stick shift? What?
Well, the benefit is we are all the Jeepers. So you go and you find not a populated fire hall parking lot like Jeff did. You maybe find a nice flat field that isn't mush. You throw the Jeep in 4 low, and you go out and you learn where the clutch grabs and disengages. And you just do that. Now, you don't even worry about steering until you're going to hit a tree, and then obviously you need to steer. But you just keep working on that back and forth, back and forth.
I wasn't ready for this. This is literally my advice for winter driving and go to a vacant parking lot and
Well,
purposely
you're
spin
trying
yourself.
to spin. I'm not.
Yeah.
We're not even there yet.
You're saying don't even steer at all. Don't worry about it.
And the gas does not exist. You're not allowed to touch the accelerator. Yes, you're going to stall, but you'll figure it out really soon. And then when you have succeeded, you'll be able to take up, get the Jeep moving with just the clutch and 4 low in first gear.
That is
That is how
really
I'm going to teach my
interesting.
kids. We're going to go out in Amy's Jeep. We're going to put in 4 low, and we're going to spend a while
yeah.
until they figure
What-
it out. Because that is honestly where the clutch grabs is the secret to stick. After that, it's all about hand foot coordination and learning where the motor
think
wants
that,
it to be and that kind of stuff.
Exactly what you're saying there. I think that's why so many people who are die hard manual transmission, it's that intimacy of hand-eye coordination, that muscle memory of clutching, of listening to the vehicle.
And it's fun to watch somebody that knows their stick shift off road. They will bring that motor down to like the last possible RPM before it stalls and then push the clutch in.
Yeah, I had a ball, but also incredibly challenged by wheeling Ryan's Big Red.
Yep.
A couple, I don't know, a month ago when we did the Southington run, because it had been a while since. Well, honestly, I don't know that I have wheeled a new body with a manual transmission. Certainly not at a technical level where we were trying to push the.
Yeah,
push it, you
and
know.
honestly, you wouldn't have even known except for the fact that you got stuck twice, but that wasn't
Well,
related to
that
the
happens-
clutch.
that happens
was
regardless.
right.
So
That wasn't. That was
the
just
loose
you
nut
getting
behind the
stuck.
wheel. Yeah,
Right.
That was,
That's what
that
I'm
was-
saying. Other than that, you wouldn't have even known that you were in a stick shift.
Yeah. Well, that was the what is it? The IDI OT light came on or whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
Meh.
Yeah,
that's fine.
minor details.
Minor details. So let's talk about where as an automotive community, where does the manual transmission come from? Maybe Old Man Brown has.
Well, so I thought it'd be fun to kind of give you an idea of what they used in the first Jeeps, where that drive line came from and what made them choose that for it. And for those that don't know, the actual motor and transmission were originally in a car. They was called the Willys or Willis, depending on what camp you're in.
Team
AmeriCar.
Willys. Hoorah!
And it was a T84. And I joke you not, this transmission is so small that the shift rails are longer than the body of the transmission are. And you have to have holes in the bell housing. Otherwise, you can't put it in first gear. So
The rails actually slide out of the body of
yes,
the transmission.
into the
It's kinda
transfer
neat.
case and into the bell housing.
It's kind of neat, actually.
So if you
And
are
they have these little shift seals that leak all the time, just so we're all on the same page.
yes, if you want your T84 to stop leaking, just drain the oil.
Yeah,
and
just,
it will
just,
stop.
Just put it on
in a
display
couple years.
in your garage.
But it is glass. It is a very fragile transmission, so it's definitely what we should have gone to war with and fought the enemy. So
Amer- Americans are all about adapt and overcome. That's really
Yes.
the American spirit,
Yes.
right? It's like,
and a quick sidebar: why in the world do we always use the worst drivetrains for our poor military personnel?
God bless our military for dealing with the continued lowest bidder.
Yes. Terrible.
Sentiment.
Well, based on that, Greg shared a video with us,
Yes.
and that explained exactly why we don't actually care what they drive, because we know that they're just going to overcome anything.
There
It
you
doesn't
go.
matter.
There you
Doesn't
go.
matter. But
Their
anyway,
spirit.
so when we decided we were going to put just anybody in the Jeep, civilian life, we needed something more robust, and it was actually so much bigger. They had to modify the floor.
So much bigger.
The drivetrain got longer. Drive shafts got short. There was probably controversy about that.
Right.
And we went to the T90. Then we decided that was pretty good for most Jeeping until we got to the Dauntless, if I'm not mistaken. And then they did some weird, I think they had like a Studebaker Hudson guy must have started.
Yeah, he switched camps.
And he was like, hey, we need to use this T86, which nobody currently knows what it is or how to get one or what to do for parts, except for that Studebaker guy.
I understand. These are all 3-speed transmissions, right? So basically, you do most of your wheeling, if not all of it, in first gear. And in fact, what's challenging about these 3-speed transmissions, they simply would not correlate with today's driving style. And it's always one of the challenges we have when a customer comes in is like, hey, I want to restore this vehicle. I want to use this vehicle.
You can.
You
just
can.
So
You just have to enjoy the quirks.
since you mentioned the 3-speed, for listeners that may not know, the 3 in a tree, what is that?
Well, I was getting there.
Okay.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
But first, I wanted to mention that this actually throws my wife for a loop because she is a 5-speed driver. So she's grown up with reverse being out the passenger door and back.
Yes.
My 36 Ford is the old school pattern where reverse,
H pattern.
which is reverse is over and forward, and she doesn't like it,
I want to share just the
which is also how old Jeeps were.
we did a parade up in kind of a suburb of Cleveland, and we did this parade, and I had actually trailered the 48 to this suburb for said parade. But finishing the parade, we decided to go out to this neat eatery and brewery,
Yes,
and they actually had valet parking.
it was a good time.
It was a good time. And so I rolled in with this 1948, no windshield, just a roll bar.
May have been running on oil. We're not sure.
May or may not have been smoking. Had old school Super Swamper Thornbirds, right, sticking all out wide,
Brakes were questionable.
and rolled in and valeted or attempted to valet.
He was a good sport. He did a good
The
job.
valet was this young man, kind of teenage character.
He was here for it.
And he looked at me like wide-eyed and was like, kind of like Jeff in his first day of first time moving a transmission or moving a manual here at the shop, was like, okay, I'll do my best. Like, here I go, And he got in. He's like, oh, I did this once or twice, and he kind of reviewed the pedals, and I was like, oh, this is gonna go somewhere,
Oh,
And,
I didn't even have to review the pedals. That's
and we let him shift, and of course he shifted up and to the left, and the Jeep started to back up, and he like stopped,
Yes.
and he looked around. But of course we've drawn a crowd at this point in time because
As you should.
Well, it's me, and I'm attempting to valet this, seriously off
And
road
the parking lot was full of Jeeps.
just full of Jeeps. The patio was full. People were waiting to get at their table, and this poor kid is attempting to valet. And I finally let him in on the little secret that he needed to go down and left. But
Yeah.
at that point in time, I said, you know what? Thanks for being a good sport. I'll just park it. Still tipped him, and they accompanied me to park it in the appropriate location. But it was a good time nonetheless.
Yeah.
So there's your H pattern.
Yes. So then at some point, we decided that the shifter in the middle of the floor is not copacetic to foot room. So they decided
I would love to know who made that decision.
Well, I can tell you that on Jeep World, that was shortly after the Civilian. And Ford World, it was 1940. They decided that you needed more room. I honestly think they just wanted on the cars for their date to be able to come over.
Oh,
and
slide over to the bench seat.
because the shifter was
that
in the
makes
way.
sense. That makes sense.
But anywho, so
Probably really was the advent of the bench seat.
yes, I think so. But anyway,
We got priorities.
Yes.
My people have priorities.
they decided that the shifter needed to go somewhere. Why not put it on the column? And it's basically the same pattern. Towards you and up is reverse. Towards you and down is first. Back and up is second, and back and down is third. And that's how I grew up, is in a 56 Chevy, dad driving a 3-speed on the tree, as we call it. And I remember the best memory of that is first gear was also glass in that. And one day the small block Chevy ate that for lunch.
Oh, dear.
And no more first gear. And I'm like in the passenger seat going, Dad, what are we going to do? Just take off in second.
Yep.
I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, watch, I can take off without the throttle in second. He took off from the traffic light in second gear, no throttle. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
That is cool. Yeah, and I always like the 3 on the tree. I think it's more of a nostalgia or romance to
Yes.
it than practical application. Because in order to achieve that, you had, I don't know, nothing short of 11 pieces of linkage
Yes.
to actually create that shift mechanism versus your standard through the floor cane
And-
that
and I'm
basically
go-
just operates the top shift.
As I always love to do, if you're a millennial and you have driven a 3 on the tree, you need to harass Jeff and let us know. See who's in my club, because I have driven a 3 on the tree, which I'm pretty sure Jeff has not.
I have not.
You know what?
Have
My
you?
favorite. Yeah. Actually, we had a Willys a Jeepster show up. Do you remember that Jeepster?
That's right.
That Jeepster.
Well, I guess
And-
Neil is in the club as well.
Yep. And we need to know. You got to put it in the
Yes.
comments, either on YouTube or here or on favorite listening platform, or text us.
Speaking of
Let
comments,
us know.
Jerry actually came in with a great comment. A great mod for a manual trans Jeep is the old school line lock roll control kit. A very reasonably cost modification, which gives you an extra foot when wheeling in those tight or hilly situations.
Is that Jerry Huber?
Yes, that's Jerry.
Jerry
Huber.
will line lock every Jeep he can possibly do. Is awesome to pick his and Bruce's brain when I'm in Toledo.
So my favorite stick shift mod is you go and you find your 10-speed bike in the shed that you haven't used in 20 years, and you rip the shifter off of it, and you adhere that to your shifter by any means necessary. Tape has been used, hose clamps have been used, zip ties have been used. I'm here for all of it. You run that cable out to your throttle, and then you can thumb throttle your
Yep.
Jeep while you clutch and brake.
Yeah, and honestly, if you are a person who is going to be proficiently wheeling a manual transmission of pre 2007, that is the best modification. Now, Jerry's line lock conversation is spectacular.
It's okay.
Because
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
okay.
it's okay. Wow. I'm sorry, Jerry.
It's the foremost ability to create braking control.
So the cool thing about a line lock, if you do it upright, you can have it lock all 4 brakes on a hill. So you can apply the brakes, lock it, and then it is going to stay there.
Correct.
Where if you try to play the e-brake game, which I have tried, you're only locking the back 2 tires, and you will learn really fast that you take more than 2 to stay on a very inoppressive.
Yeah, and for people who, in the most rudimentary way, line lock is applying consistent pressure to your hydraulic braking system.
Basically, it's an on-off valve. So you're going to push on the brakes, locking the brakes up, and then you're going to switch a valve, and it does not allow that fluid transfer to come back off.
So your calipers or your shoes are positively engaged.
Yep.
Now, obviously, you wouldn't want to drive at any speed, but when you are, trying to 2-foot a 3-pedal system, a line lock is a lifeline.
Mm-hmm.
The thumb throttle or the hand throttle was for the people who. So line locks had a place in the motorsports industry.
Burnouts.
Burnouts were big with them. But not everybody could do a line lock safely. So there was line lock failure. So you were precariously hanging on the side of a cliff and you thought your line lock was going to work for you.
And if you really succeeded, then you didn't have brakes as well. So that was a great time.
Yeah, when a line lock blows, you didn't have brakes. So there was a lot of people like airlines. Like, so air lockers are not a dirty word anymore. But at one point in time in our off-road industry, air lockers were a little bit of a dirty word because, because if you were just kind of just going to Jim Bob's garage and doing a line lock or your air brakes, you could easily compromise your system in an off-road capacity that would leave you stranded or arguably may even be dangerous. So when you have good professional individuals with, great off-road and automotive brains like Jerry and Bruce's who can line lock everything and do it in a safe and appropriate manner, then they're good as gold. For the rest of us schmoes, the brake or the thumb throttle using your bicycle parts was kind of your next best option. Realistically, you could do both and you could give yourself all the kind of all the tools for success.
Yep.
The cool thing about the newest JKs and even JLs, honestly, is that via any of your type of computer interface, so be it Superchips or Taser, you actually have the ability to live time idle up your throttle electronically.
Yep.
So for the push of a couple buttons, that's why I always recommend you leave, even if you have just a flash cal, which is a temporary use calibration tool, with the newest software updates, if you have it plugged into your OBD2 port while you're wheeling, you can actually idle up to about 1,000 RPMs, which will help you instead of having to work your toe and your foot on the brake. Your idle.
But it is a fun acquired taste to do that, though.
It is, and it has a learning curve to it, right?
Yes.
And I always tell people, I mean, one of my harrowing stories, and I will keep it brief because I think I've told it before. We were winter wheeling at what is now BFR, used to be called Scrubgrass, and it had a series of switchbacks which had iced over.
Yes.
And I had attempted to make the turn, but as I was turning, it was one of those situations where
he was drifting.
I was drifting, and so I turned my tires, but they kept going straight, right? I didn't have enough traction for those tires, and so I kept going straight. And ultimately, through the process, I dropped my front passenger tire off the trail, and in fact, kind of off of a pretty steep descent, and which then started in a really uncomfortable attempt to 3-foot myself backing up while my Jeep was actually headed off a cliff face, you know,
A crevasse.
a very large crevasse,
So, since you're
tracts of land.
Since you were mentioning steering, I'm going to go to Joe O'Brien's comment. It said, I used to drive a 71 Mac Twin stick, no power steering. And that had no power steering because it had a steering wheel the size of this couch. But
That's true.
You know what's fun? That was the first semi truck, an era. I learned on a tri-axle, double clutch Mack truck is how I learned to drive a semi truck, in an abandoned parking lot, doing almost exactly what Scott's
You'll notice a trend here.
Scott's recommendation was.
God has the best idea.
I had this guy, and I went to college, and it was interesting because, again, when most college students were planning their Cancun trips and or more appropriately studying their chosen subjects,
And people goes wild things.
I was again finding wheeling spots, learning how to swap manual transmissions, and again I was at not a school that I was supposed to be doing that. And I had a buddy who had his CDL, and I wanted to come back as a summer job and drive dump truck for the local docks. And so I had this guy, and he brought to college. He drove it home because that's what you did when you were 21, 22. Drove it from about 2 hours away, a tri-axle double clutch Mack of the 70s variation. And same thing, no power steering, but steering wheel the size of Texas.
Yeah.
And he brought it home, and I just remember at the dead of night when everybody else was partying, he and I are in the behind an old abandoned building parking lot doing loops around this parking lot as I learned to drive on on this Mack. Super cool. Unfortunately, I was not employable because you know what? Come to find out, insurance doesn't cover under 21-year-olds with the CDL.
Huh.
You can get a CDL, but you can't be insured, at least at that time.
Interesting.
Anywho,
So another one of the comments, we got Jaga Jeeper saying that they took their driver's test in an F100 with 3 on the tree. So there's one in your club
that's awesome.
And then we got Jimmy Williams, who said he used to drive an old Ford 3 on the tree with his dad to get firewood, old school, and they wishes he still had it. So there's another add to the club. But also, Jimmy had a question for us. He said, good stuff. Just got a used 23 Willys, stock with the 2.0 turbo 4-cylinder. He really likes it so far. Would like to get into some light off-roading. Big difference between the Ruby.
Well, I think we'll have to address that near the end.
Yes.
But we will try to address that for you.
Yep.
So you were chronicling our
transmissions.
transmissions, and you kind of let's skip over the 4-speeds because really nobody cares about 4-speeds.
Well, we got to say the T18 for those that know, and then we'll move on.
You know what? I didn't even think of that as a 4-speed.
Yeah. But
I'm looking at your T4s and your AX4s.
yes,
Garbage 80s
yes.
transmissions.
I will be that guy that says a T4 and a T5 in a Jeep may be marginally worse than a BA10. And that comes from a guy that beat the living snot out of a T5.
Yeah, well, yours was a world class.
That's
You
a day
did the world class.
Actually,
mod.
it was a non-world class.
Oh, I thought you did the world class mod. It took you years. I thought you eventually did it. Did
Nope.
you? Oh, you never did it.
I never did.
You know what? And we're not even going to tell you about that. But if you know, again, you know. So there's your manual. I don't want to waste your time because
Yes.
really that's old. That's old dinosaur technology there.
Correct. So then we obviously, after the aforementioned terrible French transmission, we then go to say, if you want to do it right, let's go put a Japanese transmission in there. That's where the X15 comes in.
That's kind of true.
That's sad but true. And we run that for a good long while until
The early 2000s.
early 2000s. We bring the camp back home, if I'm not mistaken.
There's a merger. There's mergers and acquisitions, right?
Yeah.
We're stealing technology, but people are upset. They're taking their red balls. They're merging
Yes.
businesses,
and
and we form new venture
Yes.
and new process.
and it somehow fits exactly in this hole that the AX15 did.
It has pretty much the same dimensions as the AX15.
There may have been some copying. Not calling
Everything
anybody.
is identical to the AX15 except for some of the internals.
Yeah,
That's
and the
really what it
shifter.
comes. Yeah,
And the
yeah.
shifter is very strange.
So you end up with the new venture series transmissions, which largely are regarded. They run in the next 20 years basically
Yeah,
because
and
the
they were pretty good.
4000 series new venture is still regarded as one of the creme de la creme transmissions for your high horsepower swaps.
Yeah. So if you really want to shut up your Toyota buddy that tells you have a Toyota transmission, you just put a new venture in it, and then we're good.
That's right. But I do need to give a shout out to Tremec with the T176.
Yes.
Right. Which was a tremendously underrated transmission.
I'll tell you why at the time it was controversial. It had an aluminum case, and we were back in those.
America.
We have
I don't
cast
like
iron.
aluminum. I like cast iron.
When the tranny falls on your chest, you want to feel it crush.
What
your
accent
ribs.
were you going for?
want this. Who am I offending right now? You mean?
Yes.
I don't know.
Everyone.
If the shoe fits, wear it. That's right. If I have to bench press the transmission, I need to suffer. As an American, I want to bench press that back into position.
Yes.
And I'm just simply tougher
You
if I
haven't
struggle.
bench pressed a tranny until you try to put a T18 in a CJ era Jeep with no jack.
We salute you.
That is a small club that you probably are in healthcare.
You eat your
getting
steak
fixed right now.
raw. You just blend up chicken eggs in the morning.
But a T176 was actually a very good transmission.
We know that now. Hindsight
Yes.
being 2020.
Yes.
But man, did we hate on that back in the day.
Yes.
It's small and aluminum. It can't work.
Yes, it has too much in common with the T4. We're
right.
scared of it.
That's right. I was angry at the T4. I was angry. What was that garbage Ford transmission we used for the?
Oh, crap.
Oh, it was a
It was
5-speed.
Yeah, it was for like 2 seconds.
2 seconds in the CJ era.
You used to see these, like, I have this weird shifter. What is this? And everybody like, oh,
Okay, we're
I'm sorry.
we're slipping.
I'm sorry.
We're slipping.
It was so bad That was definitely worse than the B8s.
I don't know. Possibly.
was.
Possibly. All right. So anyway,
Anyway.
so we needed. I had to throw Tremec a bone because here's
Yes.
the thing.
We were
can't
doing
on
so
one
well
hand-
going
I
forward.
know. But and then I derailed us. But here's the thing. If I give
SR4, there it is.
yeah, who gave us that?
Matt Bordeaux.
Good job, Matt. Thank you.
I don't
for
know if I
telling
said the
us.
last name right. I feel bad.
Well, we're just irritating
Roast
everybody
Jeffrey.
today.
I should have just let Scott do it because it was going to be wrong no matter what.
You know what? There you go. You know what? I'm making my top 10 list or my top 3 or 5 or I don't know, make up whatever number you want of the worst manual transmissions.
Yes.
Uh,
SR4 is definitely on there.
it's up there. It's in my top 5.
So why? Why is it?
Weak internal components, mishmash of parts, poor serviceability, lack of utilization. So you can't just at that time we didn't have the aftermarket that we currently have. So you were literally just going to the part store, the junkyard.
The only redeeming quality a T4 and a T5 have, is it was used in everything. Nissans, Chevys, Fords, Jeeps. I'm sure I'm missing a couple, Anyway, the SR4 was so garbage that they were taking them out of them in Jeeps when they were new, and it was only used in like low horsepower Mustangs and maybe a Ranger or two.
Right. There's a couple Mustang people out there who are pretty excited about their SR4s, and I'm sorry. Just FYI.
Daddy Jeep just commented, Matt has a very French name. I'm sure Neil has offended him.
So I was saying that I can't give the
Now you have to
envy-
say the name in French.
No, I can't. That's like Philippe who gave us our lovely the TV tray stands
That you're
which we-
pointing to off
I'm
camera.
pointing
They're-
off camera
It
because
does exist.
It does exist. It's still in our studio because of how much of a priority that is in our life. But no, I'm not doing any more of that right now. I
Oh,
probably
boy.
will. But
Yes, you will. You can't
I
help
can't
yourself.
give New Venture credit without recognizing Tremec and what they brought to the industry. And if you tune into some of our other media content, you'll know that we're working with Tremec again to do a really awesome 5-speed transmission swap into a Hemi TJ Wrangler.
Yep.
So, be on the lookout for that. And we'll be talking more about the cool things that Tremec does in our manual transmission community, along with New Venture. So let's thrust into the late 2000s.
Late 2000s.
So wait a second. We went from some USA manufacturers.
Yep.
Then we went to France.
Yes.
And that didn't cut it. We
No.
went to Japan, and
Yes. That was
I don't
pretty
know,
good.
That was pretty good. But somewhere at a corporate level at the mothership, they were
Somebody
like
took their
they took the red ball and left.
went home.
And then we decided to go to Germany
Yes.
for a transmission.
Well, we got bought by Daimler, and
Look at Scott's getting in on it.
He is.
He's
I'm
getting in on it.
impressed.
and they're like, hey, we have all this really high refined, very minute engineered transmissions. You have to use that now.
You have to use that.
And
Which was cool because actually as the industry, we wanted a 6-speed.
We did.
We wanted that.
And then it promptly had huge problems. And for those that know, that you know,
So the
in
huge
05
problems, just so you're aware, we had some internal issues, but we also had some clutch engagement issues.
Yes.
And under the Chrysler Crossfire, which I don't know my Crossfire history very well, so excuse me, but it is the early 2000s, around 5.
Yeah.
There was actually a mass recall. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, the likelihood of you ever owning a Crossfire, driving a Crossfire, or even giving 2 figs about a Crossfire are pretty freaking low.
Yes. It's a good RTI ramp.
So realistically, you probably didn't care that there was a mass recall. And in fact, anybody who did care at that time is, who knows, they're off driving drift cars from Fast and Furious at the moment. But there was a recall based on the clutch engagement pressure.
Yes.
There was an incredibly expensive fix.
Yep.
And you know what that incredibly expensive fix was? Because unfortunately, I blindly followed the Chrysler TSB for one of our early 2007 transmission swap customers. Because again, we were only 2-3 years into the swappage. And so I paid for said TSB Chrysler approved fix, which, if I recall, was somewhere north of $50 and just south of $100 for the part itself, let alone the labor. And when the part showed up, I promise you, it was 2 like 3/8 washers,
Yep.
and I paid like $54 for this
It sounds about right.
the washers, and we were to shim the pivot,
Small shim.
small shim to shim the pivot internal to the bell housing for more sufficient engagement or disengagement in the process. Mind-boggling that this was
Yes.
their fix at the time.
I remember specifically on the Crossfire, the biggest thing that everybody was all excited about was the rear spoiler that lifted up when you got up to speed.
Not
I'm
cool.
glad that today's podcast became about the Chrysler.
I'm gonna pull us back in the Jeep.
Yes,
All
please.
all
with a winch
please.
if I have to.
No.
Customers, our listeners are desperate for you to do so.
So
With the exception of Daddy Jeep, who apparently has been on a racetrack in a Crossfire SRT6.
anyway,
fair.
That's right?
if you are unlucky and you have an 05 TJ with a manual transmission, you probably have to hold it in multiple gears, otherwise it'll pop out at you constantly. Reverse and second, if I'm not mistaken, is constantly a problem.
You just are the detent.
Yes.
That's really all it is. You just employ your intimacy with the
Yes.
transmission,
Just-
and you
you
now
just-
are the detent.
You just keep your hand on the stick and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
If you're having 06, I've even heard some people talking about them late in life having the same issues, even though they were, air quotes, fixed.
Oh yeah, the big 3 love fixing a problem and going, well, just because it happened the year before or 10 Jeeps before yours isn't affected.
It's fine.
It's fine.
But that's
Oh,
not
okay.
the case.
Sure
Anyway,
it is.
so moving on, and we get into JK finally, and I think that's why they were so not caring about trying to fix this problem in the TJ, because they knew it was going away.
Yeah.
They had probably been working on the JK for 10 years at that point, and they just like, we just got to get through these last 2 years, man. So we get into that, and they actually used, if I'm not mistaken, the same basic transmission,
Yes.
but magically they didn't pop out of gears as
No.
much as TJs did. But then we had another great loss to the standard shift legacy, because for those that don't know, what really helps you drive in a 4-wheel drive stick shift is torques. All the
Need all the torques.
And-
Torques is how far. So
take the wall with you.
Hurst-Purs is how fast you hit the wall.
Yes.
Torque is how much of the wall and how far you drag the wall after you've hit it.
Correct. And if you've ever been off-road trying to lug up a hill, torque is what gets you up that hill. And the 4-liter, because it's an inline 6, had a lot of torque and would lug down real low before it would stall. And then suddenly we got a V6, which has a much shorter crankshaft and a lot more aluminums.
Yes.
And it did not like to lug down. It will just shut off. So for those of you that are in that camp, we have a clutch swap we can do for you that gives you a much heavier flywheel, and we'll make it night and day different.
Now, there was a Jeep that I recently drove down to Trailfest, and it had exactly that problem on hills.
Mm-hmm.
What is, I don't even remember what transmission that is, or
That's the transmission we're talking about. That's your
Yes.
Mercedes 6-speed manual
Yes.
transmission.
okay.
Yes.
That's this combination. What Scott is exactly talking about. You drove Clyde,
Yes.
which is owned by Connect and Company.
Yes.
Of 4 Jeeps deep, and a beautiful Jeep that originally was. I had actually helped another person purchase that Jeep with the intention to mate it to an LS. So that was a different pet project that back in 2018, 2019 did not come up off the ground sufficiently. But we built it out in a couple other ways. One of the challenges for both that customer and now the Connects under their ownership is it's just a really nice Jeep.
It drove beautifully, but you knew you were on a hill.
Correct. Because inherently in the design of the output of the engine, to the centrifugal force gained by the flywheel, there's just a lack of centrifugal momentum out of the engine power plant transfer to the transmission. Couple that same combination with a heavier flywheel, and I take this moment to talk a little bit about the components. I want Scott to finish chronicalizing our manual transmissions. And I think we should be able to wrap that up pretty quickly before I get into the actual components of the manual transmission. But the flywheel is like when you have a cycling bike at a gym or a home gym. You used to have these weights on, and it's a little
On
harder
the
to
front
get
wheel.
going on the front tire wheel because it's a cycling bicycle, and that heavy weight creates momentum,
And,
right?
and for those that don't go to the gym, everyone in our late millennial or early millennial, whatever you want to call it, someone in your friend group's parents had a cycling bike, and as a child, you had to get on there and pedal as fast as you could.
You had to move their clothes off of it first.
That's true.
Okay.
And then your foot slipped off, and the pedal would come around and smack the back of your leg.
I love it because the pedals were made out of metal then too.
Oh man,
They really,
And they-
you felt it.
you
Oh,
felt
yeah.
it. That was a trip to the medicine cabinet because we didn't go to the ER for that then.
No.
Anyway.
Rub a little dirt
I was
on
going
it.
to say that. I don't know what medicine
Rub a
cabinet
little
he was
dirt
going
on
to. If we went back home for the medicine cabinet, we were getting yelled at by the parents. So no,
So
Scott was very sheltered.
right?
So the act of that pedal coming around is the momentum or the mass of that flywheel causing that to happen.
Correct.
So anyway, really makes a big difference.
But the 3.8 transmission of 07 to 11,
yeah,
10 was bupkis.
yeah. So then we get into the 3.6 era. Did the Trinity really change overall too much?
It did not. It really didn't start to change over. We do, much like when New Venture did a little bit of rip, dip, and strip as far as how the AX15 worked. That's pretty much the transmission that is available to us in the late 3.6.
Yep.
And then into the
Which, of course, that shows, where the company was at a thing, because Daimler was kind of trying to take their bread ball and go home. But they had integrated all their parts into it so much that was hard. So then we get into Fiat taking us over and still buying German parts for a moment. And then really we get into the JL and the JT. And one of the biggest struggles for an automotive design team when you have to have a stick shift option is the placement of the shifter, relationship to dash, relationship to seats, relationship to drivetrain. And due to the stack up, you are limited on where that can fall when it is directly attached to the transmission. And you have to compromise, honestly, probably in a bunch of ways. You have noise coming in the cabin through the hole, a bunch of other things. So then we see on the JL and the JT something that we have been doing in front wheel drive cars forever.
Yep.
And honestly, for those that are like, this is scary and bad, we did it on the FCs way back when.
Way back.
We now
It's basically, we did it on 3 in a Tree. If you think about it,
kind of.
it's just the modern, smoother, better, upgraded concept of the 3 on the Tree.
So we have cableage now attached
Cable actuated shifting.
to our transmission, which allows suddenly all those roadblocks that all the engineer team had thrown out the window, because now you can literally put that shifter anywhere you want. Your dash depth can do whatever it wants. Your seating position can be whatever it wants. The drivetrain placement can be whatever you want it to be. All those limits are now gone.
Right.
And
We've eliminated some obstacles from our interior design.
yes,
And I think it's appropriate to note that at that point in time, I'm going to pronounce this Aisin, which if there's somebody out there who knows the actual factual pronunciation of that, great. It was like Temu until the Super Bowl commercial. Nobody in America knew how
Temu.
Nobody knew how to,
Yes.
and honestly, there's a number of people who are addicted to Temu pronunciation still. So God bless you. But nobody until we all collectively watched the Super Bowl commercial, we were like,
we said saying it wrong.
it's Temu. So I think it's Aisin. It's AISIN, which is the derivative.
Asante Sana.
Tomato.
Which is the derivative of the AX15. So,
Yes.
So a number of these manufacturers, especially ones that have been working with the the big three, and of course that should just say global manufacturing.
They don't
automotive
die.
manufacturing. They don't die. They just kind of keep buying and selling, and
Yes.
that kind of stuff. So now we call them ASIN,
Scott,
specifically.
This question's for you. Daddy Jeep wants to know, what is a Super Bowl?
I believe it's the biggest golf game they have, where they try to get their ball out of the water
I'm done.
as long as possible.
I hate you.
I think I speak for Rob. This is when we go to the garage and build things while everybody else is doing stuff on the television.
Oh, that's
That's
a cool
what I
story,
grew
bro.
up doing
Yeah,
anyway.
it is. It is.
Wow.
Wow. Okay.
I knew that was going to be a good answer.
Yep. Good talk, friends. All right. So, anyways, there's our JLs, and we're cable actuated shift
Yes.
mechanism, and we've overcome some obstacles as far as interior design and
Yes.
quietness and functionality. And honestly, if you've driven a manual JL, you will actually know that they're incredibly pleasing to drive. It's actually a very nice experience, very fluid, and wheeling, they're phenomenal because they actually have a heavyweight flywheel. You can actually get a hair heavier through some aftermarket upgrades. There's a number of manufacturers, one of which is Centerforce, another which is Tremec. There's a couple different characters who are making heavyweight flywheels that actually kind of exponentially increase the mass output, right? The momentum created by the flywheel, and so it feels like torque.
And the biggest thing you have to say, because there's been a recall on JT's sticks
Since they came out.
forever. They try to do what's called a triple plate clutch. So for those that don't know, since we didn't actually tell you what the parts of the system was before, I'll do it now. We have our flywheel. On our normal typical vehicles, we have a clutch disc. We then have a pressure plate, and then we have some action that unlocks that pressure plate, usually by a throwout bearing, because that is spinning, and you need something to be able to contact it that can also spin for a moment, which is why it has a bearing. Now, over the course of millennia, we've had rods that move that throwout bearing forward and backward. We've had hydraulics that have moved it with slave master scenario. And then there's mainly like the Germans that are wanting to make things more minutia. They go, well, why don't we just make the bearing itself hydraulic that pushes it out? Now we have less parts, we have less friction, we have all this sort of stuff, but we're all traumatized from the
Earliest
earliest iteration of the French transmission and early AX15 being internal, and leakage and hard to bleed. And
I was 17 and I may or may not have been traveling above the speed limit into a traffic light, and I went to shift out of gear and I put my foot to the floor
and nothing happened.
And nothing happened. And in fact, there was no clutch, there was no disengagement.
Yes.
I was just
if you haven't
in
pulled
gear accelerating.
if you haven't pulled a transmission out of gear under load, have you really lived?
Right?
Now, so there's that sentiment. We've talked a lot about the technical in the past on transmissions and clutches.
Yep.
But when people refer to burning up the clutch,
Yes.
how are they burning up clutches?
So how are you?
They got a torch and
dear.
pitchforks,
Oh dear.
and they started to chant.
I wasn't prepared for the
rally?
Super Bowl answer.
And, oh, my bad.
Well, they were doing that on the dual disc.
That is true.
But-
That is true.
How you destroy a clutch is back to what I talked about feeling where the clutch grabs and disengages. That is where that pressure plate is grabbing that disc in between the flywheel and it. That there's like this sweet spot. If you know what I'm talking about. And if you hold it in that spot too long, your disc only has so much material on it, and heat is your enemy. We have a thing around here where blue flywheels, blue pressure plates, small micro cracks. That's from heat. And if you really win the prize, you make it so hot that the media on the the disc actually comes off and is in the bottom of the bell housing, that's when you really won the stick shift prize.
With the stick shift prize. Did you mention that it's a friction disc? Did you use the word? Okay.
I thought I did.
You might have, but I think that it's valuable to kind of just reinforce the idea that you have this material and its sole purpose is to take the flywheel, which is attached to the crankshaft of the engine, which is spinning freely, and it is to take the brunt of the friction of the pressure plate. So the pressure plate is pushing.
When your Jeep is going down the road, the disc is what's driving it down the road. That is what's attached to the input shaft of your transmission.
We are just simply using pressure to push on this disc. It's actually pushing from one direction, but it's pushing against the flywheel. The pressure plate is pushing against the friction disc, and that's all being held together, allowing that torque apply, the rotation of the engine to transfer into the transmission itself.
Real quick, when you have a dual disc clutch like they try to do on the JLJT, you now have DOS friction discs, and you have a plate in between them that floats. And so you have double or maybe even triple the surface area for that, and it's supposed to share the load. So if you have a high horsepower application in the car world, a dual disc or a triple disc clutch will hold more horsepower. The problem is it's kind of a hot rod race car part, and when you enter into that, you have lots of little things you have to deal with, and the OEs learned that the hard way, how touchy that is when you have just the general public to digest it and figure it out. And we were having massive failures of that clutch, varying
degrees, right? So we had driver issue. We had the conversation is that the whispers, the rumor mill was that the clutch material itself in the manufacturing process was insufficient, that it was never actually the right recipe of friction materials to sustain the transmission and the engine, right?
Well, and something else.
I'm just going to cut you off because I know we're running short on time, but I know there's also some rumors going on from Chrysler as to what's coming up.
Well, because Chrysler has yet to actually figure this out
Yes.
as far as the clutch material. In fact, I believe there's still open recalls, and
Yes.
there are people who have corrected it with aftermarket parts who still haven't gotten paid out. It's a little bit of a black eye. The current rumor mill is that the 3.6 Wrangler will only be available with a manual transmission.
But they haven't figured out the manual transmission, so why are they making it only available
So
in
I have a
3.6?
theory. I have the mad scientist theory. For some reason, the emissions are looked at differently with stick versus automatic. And I believe this might be a last ditch for a larger motor in the future to be build series, because they are constantly tightening up the emissions and the fuel mileage and that kind of stuff. I think this is why you will see it only with a stick, because it is somehow in a different category that allows them to get away with it just a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. I wonder if there's a manufacturing, simply they can convert some plants in a different direction as they they undergo new leadership and refocus their brand identity. Maybe it has, as a business owner, I look at things. I'm wondering if there's not a manufacturing purpose behind this, and that they did not figure it out well with other applications. And so maybe they can figure out the computer interface or the plant that it's coming down.
And something else too that we just was exposed to is the EPA actually changed friction material, what it's allowed to be made out of, and it put the entire industry on its head, but nobody knew why.
At one time, asbestos was a preferred friction material.
Yep,
that's true.
There's your fun fact, folks.
But
and then it went to copper.
it
and
went
now,
to copper. And
now copper is not allowed.
And now copper is illegal to be in discs and in brakes. So if you've seen some problems, You'll now know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a percentage that's allowed, but it is significantly reduced from what it used to be.
And like always, we know about these things for 10 years prior, but we don't do anything.
We don't
about
talk
it.
about them.
Yep.
We don't talk about Bruno.
That's
Right,
right.
a different
Until
way.
it's done. So any
Yeah.
which way.
So as we're wrapping up, we've got some upcoming events. Obviously, we've got the Christmas parade coming up.
Black Friday.
Uh,
Important, real quick, we had some people on the candy crawl in non-Wrangler Jeeps asking if they are allowed to participate in the parade. And that answer is yes. If your
Absolutely.
steering wheel says Jeep or the front of your vehicle says Jeep and you want to decorate it, by all means, please come on in, experience it, have fun. We're here for it. We always love to have the biggest group we can. So that, if you have a Compass, a Renegade, a Grand Cherokee, FC, and I'd love to see an FC in the parade.
That'd be
Right.
fun.
Yeah, put that on your schedule. I know the day after Black Friday, which obviously is our portion of the parade. I know that there will be another parade in our local area where a local Jeep club supported it last year, and a local Jeeper actually plays Santa Claus, and so we'll start talking about that as more details become available as well.
Yep.
And then, do we want to touch base on this question real quick, or do we want to jump to the?
Well, I will mention real quick, if you had any further questions for us about transmissions, or you wanted to weigh in on the conversation, we encourage you to email us. You can email our producer, Jeffrey, JEFFC, at sfj4x4.com. Those are the numbers. Don't spell it out. Or you just kind of Google the old SFJ 4x4. You'll find all the contact information there.
And just bother Jeff.
And, well,
Yeah.
that's fine. Or
Absolutely.
you can text us, text only number 440-855-2100. If you had any questions, or you thought, hey, you guys didn't address this, or maybe you had, you wanted to share one of your own manual transmission stories, we would love to hear that. Go ahead and reread the question. And I will take one last moment to say, if you want to hang in there and hear about some of the weekend shenanigans and other cool Jeep lifestyle happenings, and the candy crawl, as Scott had mentioned, you may want to hang out for the cutscene following the outro.
All right, so this was just got a used 23 wheelie stock with a 2.0 turbo 4-cylinder. Really likes it so far. Would like to get into some light off-roading. Big differences between the Ruby.
So the biggest answer we always tell everyone that goes and gets a new to them Jeep, go wheel it, go
Yep.
experience it, go try it out. But to actually answer your question of what the big difference between a Willys package or Willis, gotta be all encompassing. It's 2024.
2024. I'm here for
and
you.
a Rubicon.
It's
So
a safe space, folks.
it is. A Rubicon has a
It's a little
front.
too safe around you
Oh,
sometimes.
jeez. Anyway,
Hugs for everyone, man.
winching
hugs.
back onto the task. We-
Fair.
We have a front disconnecting automatic sway bar that you press with a button, unhooks it on the Rubicon. It does not have that on the Willis or Willys package. We have lockers front and rear on the Rubicon and slightly wider axles on both truck and Jeep Wrangler platforms. We also have a different fender flare. So the fender on the Rubicon is higher up and shaped differently than the non-Rubicon models. We also, in the transfer case, have a 4-to-1 low range versus the standard. I think it's a 2.72, I think, still.
Yep.
Most Willys package Jeeps have a limited slip in the rear axle. And then we get to the part that's different that I still don't completely understand. Most Willys package Jeeps come with mud tires stock, and most Rubicons have all-terrains. Which
While you were outlining everything like that, I'll go one step further and say your mechanical gear ratio in the Rubicons
Yep.
is on average a 410.
Yep.
And your Willie Willis is oftentimes 373.
yes,
Now, with that said, and if I had to not outline everything like Scott would have just done, I would tell you that the number one difference for the average Jeep owner is going to be that 4-to-1 low transfer case coupled with the gear ratio.
Yep.
That's going to be what you notice the most. There's a ton of Rubicon owners out there who have Rubicons and will never even scratch the surface of the off-road prowess that it offers. But what they absolutely do notice is that low gear ratio, high mechanical advantage that it is given. Your Willie Willis will absolutely hang in there with some of the most built 20, 30-year-old Jeeps in a stock capacity. So follow some really basic off-roading, advice, air down, disconnect if possible to maintain, contact of traction, and pick your lines accordingly and enjoy yourself. Because your rear traction, your spin-free device, it's just going to be working for you. It's a posi clutch design, similar to how that friction material worked that we were mentioning.
And as I mentioned, you already have the right tires for it because that's what they did.
Yep.
So
and that Willie Willis will just straight do work for you. Enjoy yourself.
It really is one of the best bangs for your buck if you want to build the Jeep into what you want it to be long term. Where the Rubicon, they've kind of done a lot of the work for you and made all the choices for you.
Yeah, it's fine accoutrements. It's well engineered. It's an appropriate engineered fit. But honestly, most people who own Rubicons don't actually need them.
Yeah.
And I'm, obviously our listener base is already biased. So you may actually go, hey, I work the heck out of my Rubicon. Cool. I appreciate that. But there's a bunch of people who are probably not our listeners because they're just driving the Jeep because it's a cool point A to point B vehicle.
Cool to have a Rubicon, and they have no idea why it says Rubicon on it.
Yeah, but the dealership certainly, hey, this is a Rubicon.
Yes.
And, helps sell the package.
Yep.
Folks, this was a banger of a session. And I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Again, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your manual transmission stories. We'd love to hear good, bad, and otherwise. Most importantly, would really be tickled if you would leave us a review and share this message with a friend.
Or log into Patreon and sign up.
Yeah, sign up for Patreon. I should also mention that those of you who have positively contributed to building the podcast studio through your Build the Sign campaign, we have some shirts. So Giaga Jeepers, Chuck Lori, and Micah Bidwell, we have your shirts available for
that's your
Lori.
notice to come.
Chuck Lori. Oh my gosh.
Come see the studio, get your shirt.
Yeah, come see it. Folks, this was a good one. If we could maybe not mispronounce everything and offend all of the nationalities in the process. Or maybe we'll just do it again next week. Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on. That's
Chuck,
okay.
I'm Chuck. I'm sorry that I butchered your name on top of it.
Well, it happens.
You know what? I brought a treat. I know that last week was.
I know what that bag is.
Yeah, right. I know that.
Got excited. I don't know what this is, but he
I know it
is
was a taste test
ecstatic.
last week, but here are
I am here for it.
Savage. If you can hear me,
I don't think he can
outside-
hear you. We're
You
in the
can't.
enclosed
Just
studio.
split up the
I know,
donut
but
and give
Is
it to the people.
is he
who can hear.
watching us? So
Well, it's playing out there.
is it though?
It is.
Oh, there it is. Look, he's giving us a nod.
Savage. Do you want to come get your donut? I've got a donut.
Come
for
on,
you.
boy. Come on.
He said no. He said, eat dirt, you guys.
Split it
See?
into threes.
But I want. See, I know that Savage was listening. He's good like that. So yeah, this was my wife and I were trying to do some fall inspired activities, and so we did a Jeep ride to Brandt's Apple Orchard, and so these are their homemade donuts
Been a
made with
staple.
apple.
I was gonna say you could taste the apple in it.
I have been having these for my entire life. Is one of the things I look forward to in the fall.
It's amazing how the recipe doesn't change,
They are
even when
smart.
they changed hands.
They
You know
are
what I mean?
smart. This is locked away somewhere
Right.
behind lock and key, and it's one of those like you have to get through a process to know.
So-
It's great.
So
I know-
I thought of you guys. I thought I would bring the donuts in and share with you.
I
so.
appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know. So I went to that Halloween parade, but you guys stayed here. Did
We-
the
We did the
crawl.
candy crawl.
Yeah, how'd that
which
go?
is, second year doing it. So it was the second year of the candy crawl. It was our first year doing it. I really appreciated how presentable the shop was when I got in on Saturday. So thank you to you all for making sure that happened. Our new table rolled out perfectly. We had goodies. We were making sure that if you were prioritizing coming back into our little industrial complex, because we were not immediately on the beaten path, that we were going to make it worth your while. So we had fruity candy, we had a chocolate bowl candy, which Scott was saying was confusing to people, but I want to make sure you had that. It's 2024. I'm here to support everyone equally.
Yes.
And then I had chips because, kind of that's a universal
Yeah.
love sign.
And
then
you got a
stickers.
sticker.
And you got a sticker because you amazed how many people were like, ha ha ha, can I get a Jeep? And
We're
Scott,
like, here's a Jeep for your basket.
there's a Jeep sticker for your kid, and actually people really jazzed up on the stickers.
So it was actually really fun. For those that don't know, we have the purple strap use tally, and we had a game to see if we could overcome the amount of trick-or-treaters versus purple strap tallies.
Mm-hmm.
And I am here to say, you guys blew it out of the park.
Right. Yeah. We
The
had
purple strap was not equipped to handle the heat you brought.
the number of people who came trick-or-treating.
I
here.
mean, it was impressive.
It was a lot of fun. I think we got some people who they did the in-town trick-or-treating.
Yeah.
There was only a handful that I felt were dedicated to hit up every single business, and it was like 60 some businesses.
That's a lot of
was a lot.
businesses. Well, what were the times that it ran?
It was 4 to 7 p.m.
Okay, I didn't realize it was
Our
that
last, Well, it was originally supposed to be 5 to 7. And other than the fact that I sat in on a board meeting for the 4th of July parade, I was not aware that they actually upped the time frame to 4 o'clock because Scott and I were planning to be here at 5. And thank goodness that I kind of caught wind of it through this other.
Yeah, we would have missed a lot of people.
We would have missed a ton of people. It would have been disappointing for us and for them. And so I got in a little after 3 and started to set up. And we had a good friend of the business, Darla. She brought up her Jeep Harley and had it decorated. And then the Brown family came all in costume. My kids came in costume.
I saw pictures of Leo as the Marshmallow Stay Puft Man.
Dude, he killed it. He
He was
cranked up-
dancing.
we cranked up the music in the shop like we would normally listen to, but I found like a Halloween playlist.
Yeah.
People were dancing. People were loving on the Jeeps.
Yep.
Aiden and Leah were, cheering on people. So if you were coming to the Jeep shop in town,
Yes.
we made it worth your while.
You saw two very excited 11-year-olds. One is Batman, and one is a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. It was just a super great night. I mean, like I said, when we were rocking out, it was just a really cool vibe, honest to Pete. And what I was talking about, there was a couple parents who were not here for the vibe. They were here to check off the list, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's
but they were like, go, 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 get out the car, get your candy, get back in the car, let's go. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I mean, if that's what works for your family, that's fine. I don't know. You might have to pay for therapy lessons for your child later in life, but I think they hit off all of their.
The part that I loved so much because I could see the little Jeepers in the making, where some of the kids, they're like, there's a lot of Jeeps here, and they're really cool.
Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome.
I got to as usual. I kind of get to live out as I wasn't exactly in costume, and I had the opportunity because of the support team here to kind of stay off to the side, and so I think one of my best moments was I was just kind of randomly outside by the dumpster where I probably would belong, and and this little trick or treater came, walking up, and he was with a crowd. He was with like a crowd, and I don't know, other than that, maybe I looked like I belonged. And he was like, "When I grow up, can I work here?" And I was like, "Sure thing, dude. Like, follow your dreams. You know what I mean?"
Yeah.
So it was a blast. It was a really cool extension of the Jeep life.
That's
you know?
awesome.
It was a good weekend for fall and Jeep life inspired activities.
Yep.
I don't know if you have anything exactly to contribute additionally with your automotive, vehicular, or other pursuits?
Only thing I was gonna say is we had a Simpson weekend where we
Uh-huh.
packed 115% of things into 80% of the time.
Isn't that how it's supposed to work?
I was going to say, I thought that's how it worked.
I was a little stressy, but we were able to not only work and procure Halloween costumes that we did not wear to the candy crawl, plus bring us
You
additional
are a
costumes.
crummy mess.
I did make a mess.
And,
I was ridiculous.
Then do the candy crawl, and then traverse the entirety of Asheville County, I felt like, and then made it to Erie for a witch's ball, which was great fun. I'm glad my wife talked me into doing it, because those that know the Mad Scientist know that I am not the first to go
Most
out.
socializing.
Not,
Right.
Yeah, not to socialize. But it was a lot of fun. We were jeeping all across this general area.
Yeah.
2 different states. So that was a lot of fun. Needed to recuperate on
It was,
Sunday.
yeah, I was gonna say it was a big weekend for just
Yeah.
the Jeep life extension.
Yeah.
But I am salivating because I am desperate to hear how your representation of SFJ 4x4 and the Jeep community went at the Crawford County / Meadville Halloween parade.
The parade was really fun. When we got down there, we got there about 4 o'clock, and maybe a few minutes after, and the police, the road control people, traffic controllers, were out, and they were there to do their job. Holy cow! Like they're telling them stop, and then they're waving people
Throwing
on,
their
and
hands
like, you
out,
can walk,
big
you
body
can cross.
movements.
It's okay, you can cross now. Okay, you go. Where are you
Listen,
going? What
listen,
number
I'm
are
gonna
you?
take a moment and just say, you know what? Oh yeah, I appreciate a lot of those people are volunteer, right?
Oh yeah.
and they are here to ensure people's safety.
And
so I get it.
they did a really good job. I was surprised at how intense they were, but they did a good job. So kudos to them for keeping that safe. So then we get down to where we're supposed to be, and we're told we're going to be lining up on South Main Street, and then you have to go north on it because they've blocked it off. It's one-way traffic. Well, as you're going north, I see a side street, and then I realize after the fact that Diana, who was organizing the Jeep portion of it, was
from Tool City Jeep Jam,
from
right?
Tool City Jeep Jam. She had actually made a post about an hour before we got there saying that they were going to be on
lining
that.
up on a side street.
Yep.
And
And
I'd wondered if you saw it. I was like, uh-oh, he might be driving already.
Nope, so I didn't see it. So I just end up pulling down and turning around and getting in line behind there.
Well, that's good.
And it worked out really well. I think there was about 7 or 8 Jeeps total. She said she had been anticipating up to 16. So about 7 or 8. We got there, like I said, just after 4. The parade wasn't set to start till 6:30. So now I've got a truck full of kids. We left the Conestoga wagon on.
Mm-hmm.
We decorated at the house before we left. We had skeletons and cobwebs and blacklight all in the truck bed. So when we got there, we had just opened up the side panels of the
Yep.
Conestoga wagon.
Looked kind of cool.
Yeah, did the safari approach on it, I guess is what they call that.
Okay.
And pushed the skeletons out the rails of it so they look like they're hanging out, having a good time. And then we put a couple skeleton aliens on the front bumper because it was an alien themed parade.
Sure.
So otherwise, I mean, that a great time hanging out prior to it starting. We ended up taking the kids and walking up to the Quick Stop Shell to get some snacks and bathroom break. Realized that was like 3 blocks up from where we were at. But it was kind of cool. We got to see all the stuff walking up
Sure.
up the parade route. And then I really liked that they did a reverse lineup. So the start of the parade actually was at the back end of the lineup. So the whole parade had to pass you by until your number, and then you passed the rest of the parade. So you got to see the whole parade.
That's cool.
So I really liked the reverse lineup. That was fun. I have not experienced
Did you
that before.
turn around and parade, or
No.
how did
So
you just pull out to the left?
so
to
south
the right, or?
so South Main at the elementary school roughly
Yep,
is where they started.
All right.
That's where number 1 started.
Okay.
And number 126 was actually where the parade started.
I'm with you, but how did you
So
get around them?
They were lined up on the sides of the street.
So then,
So you had the
just
middle of
pulled
the street.
You just pulled out of wherever you were. You know, if you
Yep.
were on the left, you just pulled to the middle. If you were on the right, you just pulled
Yep.
to the middle.
And they had somebody directing you when to go and telling the next float to or parade group to wait.
Sure.
And so that was actually really cool. I really liked that.
Interesting.
They made it more enjoyable for the kids who were in the parade as well, because now they get to see everything without missing it.
That's awesome.
What I didn't like is when we actually got into the parade route, the amount of people that just surround. I mean, you were engulfed in people.
You shared something with me, and I'm blown away because I've never experienced this. And professionally doing parades, which is just such a wild thing because I love off-roading. But I've done parades for a decade and a half professionally.
I literally said to Diana afterwards, I have been in parades since I was a kid. I did them with the fire department. I did them here with the Jeeps. I've been in parades since I was a kid. I have never seen something like this.
Just wait.
Ever. There was so many people surrounding the vehicle. They were literally knocking on the windows, asking for candy. As I'm moving, they're touching the vehicle. There are little kids just zipping in and out between the vehicles, trying to grab candy, trying to grab ducks, whatever they were. And this was a no throwing candy parade. And I can only imagine for this reason, because of the fact that there's no control. There's no control.
But maybe that's why. Maybe they should be throw. I mean, every parade I've ever been in is when you throw the candy, people stay where they're supposed to be. So versus if you're handing out candy.
So the directive was that if you were to bring candy for the parade, you had to have somebody walking alongside your group. They weren't allowed to be in the vehicle.
Makes sense to me.
And I think that was simply because they know they can't control the people to stay off the dang street.
That's why.
It was so incredibly overwhelming to see how many people just right in front of the vehicle. I mean, I had to slam on the brakes so many times, so many close calls. The Jeeper behind us was literally yelling at parents to watch their kids.
No way.
It was bad to the point that is all the kudos to Diana for organizing this and trying to make this a fun time for Jeeps. She literally posted that she doesn't know if we're going to do it as a Jeep community again because it was
wow. I didn't see that.
The chance of somebody getting hit is so high. I mean, I just simply don't want to be.
Liability
I don't want to be involved in that.
What really blows me away is being in classic cars, I've been in a ton of parades as well, including 4th of July and Memorial Day parades, that kind of stuff. And candy or not, never ever ever seen anybody that close to the vehicles.
I've seen the occasional kid will run out, this or that.
And the
this was
on
crowds. The entire parade route, crowds encompassing, just swarming around the vehicles. You're basically pushing people out of the way with the vehicle.
You know what's wild is, I mean, I moved to Meadville in 2003, and this parade was a community staple. Somewhere in there is when I was became aware of it, and I can't say that I regularly attended it, but I always went. When we did go down, we always went down and we enjoyed it. We had an amazing time, and it was touted as like the largest Halloween parade in Pennsylvania or something.
Yeah, and it's still 126 spots in the parade. This is a huge parade.
Yeah, and I mean, I always thought it was cool, and they tried running a Jeep club through there somewhere in like 2012, 2013. I don't exactly recall. It didn't exactly take off. The business wasn't in Meadville. I just lived there. So I never really kind of pushed for us to further participate. And, and Diana has been coming to us for services and to participate in some of our social activities. And I thought, well, hey, this is so she said she's going to organize this, to draw up
Jeep group
attention. Yeah, the Jeep group to draw up attention for her event, Tool City Jeep Jam. And I thought, well, this is really cool. Let's get involved. And of course, I know how much you love your parades, decorating the Jeep. This is right up our ability and your alley.
Yeah.
And I was so excited to try and help support both the parade and Diana in the process.
And I did tell her at the end, I said, despite all of that, if she organizes it again next year, I'd be more than happy to come back. The experience of the Jeep community
was not so terrible.
Is always amazing.
Right.
And you just hope that next year the city does something different for crowd control.
Yeah.
Hope.
Wow.
But it's just incredible. One of the highlights that I thought was really fun is Morgan actually dressed as Mandalorian, and he had a little baby Yoda with him, a baby stuffed Yoda.
Yeah.
So the highlight of the crowd the entire time, it's Mandalorian. Mandalorian, it's Baby
Mando-
Yoda.
it's Mando
Can
and-
I have your Baby Yoda? And he had the time of his life waving to everybody because he got all that extra
That's so cool.
recognition.
That's awesome.
So that was really fun. And then on the way home, we actually dropped off Xander at my aunt and uncle's house. He was going to get paid to work there Sunday and help with some yard work, stuff like that. So Sunday we ended up doing a game, the mystery games that I told you about.
Yes.
We did it again. This one was based in Boston, so that was really fun.
That's awesome.
And then obviously traveled back and
And
got
picked your
Xander.
son up. Yeah.
So we were all over with the Jeep again.
Yeah, right. It seemed to be the theme of the week.
And mine's still decorated. I figure I'm just going to leave the decorations in the back through Halloween, through trick or treating.
Yeah.
Because I'll probably in our neighborhood we get a few trick or treaters. I'll probably just open it up and have it glowing because that black light in there really.
It's
made
all
it
fair
pop.
game for another week or so.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, if anybody's still hanging in there with us, it was fun hearing about hearing about the weekend and catching up with you guys and what you did. We wish everybody a safe and adventure filled Halloween. And until next week, Jeep on.